Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as always, Richard B. Kroll, and Mark R. Weaver.
Wow, I'm impressed you know my middle initial, but you know from the
Email address.
Very
formal. Plus, I think after knowing you for 40-some years, I pretty much know your middle initial. I mean, you might have been able to guess at my middle initial, right, or no?
Yeah, I would have got it.
You think so? Okay. Richie, we always start with, well, by the way, how was your Thanksgiving? I know that last year on the show, we did a thankfulness episode. And the reason we didn't do thankfulness again this year is because I I looked at about a 20 episode run from last year through this past spring, and the thankfulness episode was our lowest rated.
Really?
Yeah. 20 straight episodes. Thankfulness is the lowest rated. So that led me to believe that maybe our listeners didn't really care that much about thankfulness. So we didn't do it again this Thanksgiving. It's a long-winded way to get to why I asked you about your Thanksgiving.
That's either sending us a message about the show itself or just humanity in general. I'm not sure.
It could be. But I am still thankful, even though we didn't do a show on thankfulness. And I know you are too, but you had a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, thanks for being personable and asking me this question before you jump right into the show. Great Thanksgiving. We alternate my family, my wife's family every other year. This year it was my family, and when it's my family, I get to deep fry a turkey, which is just
That's like a hick thing to do, isn't it?
It's a monumental hick thing, and it's one of the greatest things they ever invented.
You got to be careful with those things. They've caused fires. They've caused burns, from the splashing of the fry.
You know what
oils.
else causes fire and burns? If you stick your entire face into the oven for an hour.
That's true.
The point is, yes, but do you realize all those stories are about lunatics
Right.
that take a frozen turkey and drop it in boiling oil, and water and oil causes an
With
explosion.
their face hovering over it.
Yeah, or like underneath the curtains in their kitchen, or their balsa wood derby, models. Yeah, so there are ways to be a complete idiot.
But anyhow, yes, I just wanted to let our listeners know that we are truly thankful, even though we didn't do a thankfulness episode, and hopefully everyone out there is thankful for the many blessings that we have in this country. So even though we tend to complain a lot on this show and try to point out things that could be better, we are thankful. So
Are we not complaining on the behalf of others?
of course.
Oh, okay.
Of course.
So it's not
This is a mission that we're on, Rich. This is a mission that we're on to help society. Richie, do you have any words of wisdom or tips of the day other than being thankful?
Other than being thankful, I have a good tip, I believe. So, a lot of our listeners are of our generation. We'll say over 35, over 45, over 50.
Quite a bit over 35.
And maybe also those same numbers overweight, 25, 35, 45 pounds overweight. I don't know about you, but there are many mornings I wake up, and when I turn to get out of bed, I feel like I'm 80. Like the first couple steps, my feet are sore, my back, my knees, and
When'd your back start hurting?
about a week back.
Wah, wah, wah.
And when I go down the steps, I'm taking one step at a time. I'm like, so I started doing this little 60-second routine. It's been amazing.
Stretching?
Well, before you get out of bed, you wake
Right.
up, before you hit the floor, you pull your left, you're laying down, you pull your left knee to your chest for
Right.
15 seconds.
Right.
You pull your right knee to your chest for 15 seconds.
Right.
You pull your left knee towards your right hip with your back, to get your hip stretch.
Right.
And then when you stand up, you lean forward with your heel on the floor, kind of like that hyperextend your leg
Right,
to
right.
stretch out the
Hip,
calf
Right. Or the Achilles.
or both. And then literally, I'm walking and I'm ready to run. It completely eliminates that first 5-minute get out of bed, can't walk or go down steps soreness.
So let me ask you another hurdle. What is Jill doing at this point in time?
She is rolling her eyes
Okay.
or she's already up and out.
Okay. See, that's my problem is My wife is very sensitive to my movements in the morning because I'm up at 5. And if I make any noise whatsoever, if the floor creaks, she gets annoyed that I'm making noise and waking her up. So for me to try to do that would be impossible.
But what are you, in a bunk bed?
No, we're in a king-size
Well,
bed.
if you have a normal king-size mattress, like memory foam mattress, you can move a little bit. She won't feel anything.
You don't know my wife.
Oh, boy.
No. She's got like the perception of an elephant ears. She just hears every little thing.
What's the nursery rhyme?
If I pick up my glasses, my readers, off the nightstand, she hears that.
Then this tip won't work for you. What's the nursery rhyme with the pea underneath the pillow? She could feel it.
I don't know. I've never heard that one, actually. I've
that's-
literally never heard
That's
that.
your wife.
Well, I don't
She
know.
could feel a pea underneath her pillow.
She might be able to. But that's a good tip. No, I have heard one of my other buddies told me that he stretches before he gets out of bed every morning, and it makes a huge difference because he was in a car accident, had a really bad back, and he stretches before he gets out of bed every morning. That won't work for me, unfortunately. All right, Richie. So before we go to our agenda, I want to make sure we thank our patrons since we're being thankful. Mark Zlotnikov, Eric Weaver, George Muldoon, Mike Smalls, Chris Barbie, Scott Carney, Alvaro Puga. And by the way, folks, we've talked about how...
Not Tom Rafferty?
Not Tom Rafferty yet.
I'm waiting.
We're working on him. I've talked many times about how to become a patron, the logistics of going to our areweidiots.com, supporting listeners, clicking on the Patreon link. But I often don't mention specifically how low a commitment it is to be a patron. So we have bronze level, $5 a month. What's that? Two Wawa cups of coffee if you live in the Philadelphia area. Starbucks if you're somewhere else, right? One Starbucks. $8 a month, for silver. That's $8 a month. I mean, that's like a sandwich, a hoagie somewhere, right? $10 a month is gold, and $15 a month is platinum. And there's lots of things that you get at the platinum level that you can go on our website and check it out. But anyhow, not a high commitment. We need the support, and we'd ask you to consider that during this holiday season of giving.
Mark, thanks for explaining that because I think you were scaring away a lot of people with these terms,
Platinum.
gold and platinum and silver, and all of a sudden people are like, well, do I have to give up my golf club membership to help you guys out? But hey, folks, there are costs associated with the show as far as running the studio, hosting costs, and it's really helpful. We appreciate it.
Good. So on the show today, Richie, you have some Idiot of the Week nominees for me, and I get to be judge and jury this week. Then we're going to talk about the problem with averages. And this is one of those topics where Rich probably rolled his eyes, but, that happens from time to time. But we're going to talk about that and why that's a big part of our culture and why that's problematic in some ways. And then we're going to conclude with a averages quiz. I'm going to ask Rich some common things that we associate with averages, and we're going to give him multiple choice questions. We'll see how he does on that. What do you think about that, Richie?
I'm pretty good at math, but I'm scared because you normally try to trick me.
Yeah. I will say this. It's a pretty hard quiz. Even though it's very common, the way I phrase the multiple choice questions, it's going to be very difficult.
Do I have to memorize the Pythagorean theorem?
No, but the pi. If you can recite all of pi, that would be good.
I can do all. I can only do 10,550 digits.
How about the quadratic formula? Can you just jot that down for me right now?
Whatever you need.
All right, Richie, you have some Idiot of the Week nominees. Lay them on me.
These are simple and quick, but very idiotic. So, we've talked about the game within the game in sporting events. And I'm a big hater of excessive celebrations. I was just texting people the other night. I think it was Seattle came up with this crazy interception or something, or fumble recovery. I forget exactly. And the entire defense ran 75 yards together to the other end zone to post. And I'm thinking, it's the middle of the third quarter.
Yeah, it's a new thing they do now. I don't get it.
It drives me nuts. But this one's right up there and how it can really backfire.
Okay.
So every year I think it's called the Egg Bowl or whatever, Ole Miss, Mississippi versus Mississippi State, huge rivalry. This year, Ole Miss went from tying the game on an extra point against Mississippi State to an embarrassing 1-point loss thanks to the antics of wide receiver Elijah Moore. Moore caught a 2-yard TD pass with 4 seconds remaining to bring the game within 1 point. Moore then proceeded to get down on all fours and crawled 10 yards to the back of the end zone, lifted his leg like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant.
Was that Plexico Burris that first did that?
Yes, it was. And then I believe a former teammate, or at least an Ole Miss player, DK Metcalf, who I think is now in Seattle, did the same thing. So this, it's kind of like peeing on your opponent.
Right.
And this triggered a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty, which moved the extra point back 15 yards.
Right.
Ole Miss kicker Luke Logan then proceeded
To miss.
Now, a couple things. Well, does it make that big a difference? Yes, because Logan was a reliable 96% on extra points throughout his entire 3-year college career so far. So after the game, obviously, it should have went into overtime.
Right.
And should have gone into overtime, I guess is proper English. So they asked him about it, and Elijah Moore said, "I apologize to my teammates, coaches, and Rebel Nation for my actions at the end of the game. It was an emotional moment, and I deeply regret it. It does not represent who I am or who we are as a team, and we will grow stronger from this." How does it not represent you being so selfish, not understanding the game situation, the importance of this pseudo bowl game to the university and to all the Ole Miss fans?
Right.
And how does it make the team stronger? The season's over. They're not. I think they're so. Help me with this one. That's the first one.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I know those things tend to bother you a little bit more than me, but obviously that's idiotic. If anytime you should catch yourself, folks. Anytime you're mimicking Plexico Burris in anything in life, you're probably on the wrong track.
Yeah, we got.
I'm going to bring a gun to a nightclub now and fire it.
We had Plexico as a idiot of the week about a year ago.
That's
so,
probably
right?
true.
Shot himself. All right, now thank God for Florida.
Okay, I knew it. I knew you had to include one.
And I'll tell you, my Florida informant, Larry Helms in Texas. Texas folks hate Florida folks, which makes sense. He's always feed me these, so I gotta give him credit. Another just classic. A Jacksonville man has been arrested by police after he assaulted an elderly man.
He salted one?
Not like a
no pepper, just salt?
Not like a salted peanut, assaulted.
Assaulted, okay.
After he assaulted an elderly man who caught him masturbating in a Fresco YMass parking lot. Fresco YMass is a Hispanic grocery store down in Miami. 39-year-old Kerry Vandergriff was heavily intoxicated with his pants down in the parking lot getting after it. The elderly man told Vandergriff to stop doing that. Vandergriff then proceeded to punch the man and continued punching him after he fell to the ground. Police were called to the scene, and due to Vandergriff's intoxication, he was detained and sent to the hospital. Then, that's where Vandergriff continued to masturbate in the hallway in front of officers and the medical staff.
He's a serial masturbator.
Vandergriff now faces charges of indecent exposure, battery, disorderly intoxication, and
serial masturbation. Well, he was away from. Give him a break, Rich. He was from Jacksonville. He was in Miami. I mean, he was away from home. He's lonely.
He showed that.
He felt the need to in the
about the hospital
middle
hallway?
of a parking lot,
Really?
in the middle of a hospital hallway.
You're going to arrest me, I'll show you and the medical staff. Take this.
Oh my goodness! What in the world is wrong with people?
A lot.
I mean, goodness gracious!
And I tell you, I saw the photo of him. He was like a blonde-haired looking guy with a little bit of scruff, but he looked normal. I mean, if looks mean anything, because sometimes you see that crazy eye look or deranged.
Like the meth look.
Yeah,
on meth. Wow, this is going to be hard, Rich, because I think certainly the receiver doing what he did and pretending to be a dog peeing in the end zone, that affected probably 1 million people. When you think about it. First of all, what about all the bettors? I wonder what the line was affected.
I don't think
there.
it was a big number.
No.
If you had Mississippi on the money line, meaning picking them to win,
Right. I mean,
you'd be
you-
insanely furious.
right. So I think, from a pure, I'm going to have to pick him only from a pure effect of your idiocy that probably affected hundreds of thousands of people at a minimum, and maybe even a million people if you include the bettors. So I think he's going to be the idiot of the week. But I got to be honest, as far as loser in life nominee, if you are hell bent on masturbating so much that you need to do that in a convenience store parking lot, and then you beat up an old man, and then as you're entering the hospital, you do it in the hospital hallway, I think you have to seriously reevaluate your life. Just call me crazy, but
That is solid advice. I have friends that can't even pee in a public restroom.
oh yeah,
They get stage fright. How could this guy?
I won't mention, but the person I could mention knows who he is. Someone very close to me has that same issue.
This guy had to have a lot of
Gotta be in a
confidence.
stall. Gotta be in a stall.
Yeah.
Can't go to an Eagles game. Be out there.
Ask the person who has this problem. See if he could masturbate in public in front of the police and doctors.
I actually don't really want to know. So I don't think I'm going to.
If he says yes, that's a problem.
So I will send $1 to this poor kicker. Actually, I'm going to send it to the kicker because he was put in a bad spot and made to look like a goat. Not greatest of all time, a real goat in the old meaning of goat.
Luke Logan,
Luke
you will get
Logan.
$1 from Mr. Mark Weaver.
Right, and I'll
R.
actually-
Weaver.
Yeah, Mark R. Weaver. Get it straight, Richie. All right, Richie. So, from time to time, I go on these little tangents, right? And
Did you say week to week or time to time?
periodically, how's that?
That's better.
And I have like a public service announcement. I hope that if you listen to the show, and if nothing else comes of this next segment, that you'll learn the proper use of mean versus median. The average is the mean, and oftentimes we should be using median. So, Rich, don't you think people are excited to to listen to the rest of the segment?
One of the listeners just texted me, and they said they believe this episode will now be the lowest rated versus last year's Thanksgiving
Versus
episode.
thankfulness. It wasn't the lowest rated ever. It was just in a 20 episode period. Thankfulness.
There's
was
a
what
good
it-
chance we're on that same path with this episode.
But let's actually talk about this because I really do think there's two different lines of thinking around this this segment. So one, first of all, before I go away from it, what is mean? The mean is an average. So the mean is you take the total sample size and whatever it is divided by the number of units. So hypothetically, if we were talking about the mean income or the average income in the United States, you add up all the income, divide it by the number of people. Make sense?
Makes sense.
But the median is really
Isn't that what's down the middle of the street?
yes, the median is down the middle. And that is a good way to remember it. Down the middle is where 50% of the sample size is below and 50% is above. And so, for instance, if I was in a town and the average income in the town was $100,000, and then Jeff Bezos moved into my town, it would dramatically skew the results, right? A median is closer to an average, meaning that 50% are below and 50% are above. So, if nothing else, folks, you'll use median and mean and average properly now that you know this.
Let me do some real numbers because
Yes.
that's going to confuse half of our audience in
half of it,
Havertown.
the median,
No pun intended.
half above, half below.
So if the average salary in a town was $50,000
Right,
and there's 100 people in that town,
right,
and Jeff Bezos shows up with
Right.
his $150 billion,
right.
that wouldn't make the average salary, $1 million because everyone's making $40,000. So what you're saying is, look at where does the cutoff?
No, it would dramatically increase the average or the mean.
It increases the average, but
Right.
it's not reflective of the reality,
Correct.
which is what the median does for
Correct. Correct. And that's at the end of the day, that's what we're going to talk about here in the show is why averages really do distort. Averages are appropriate and helpful at a very macro level. And they're helpful to provide benchmarks. But at an individual level, they're actually, I would call them almost more harmful. And we'll talk
They're
about
skewed. The person that just texted me concerned said, now I'm back in. This is getting exciting.
All right, Richie. So let's talk about a little bit. So we'll talk about the mental aspect of comparing yourself or a benchmark, and we'll talk about the actual data. All right. So let's talk about why do humans tend to need. We'll talk about the psychological part of it first. Why do humans tend to need a benchmark to compare themselves with? There's actually a name for it. It's called social comparison theory. And basically, humans, right or wrong, I'm not really one of them, but there are evidently a lot of people that need a point of comparison. Most of the time, it's within their same social group or demo, but averages also come into this because they hear statistics and what have you, and so people tend to compare, and they unfortunately tend to derive a lot of their self-worth. So they compare up and they compare down, and they make assessments about their self-worth and their standing. What do you think is in humans that so many of us are prone to this?
I think it's in our nature to be successful. I think it's in our nature to not feel like a loser. So I would say that the way this branches out is either the misery loves company theory, where if you compare yourself to somebody that's doing worse, it makes you feel better.
Right.
Like if you have a bad situation, financially, physically, whatever, and you're like, oh, but look at Harry or look at Sally, they're a lot worse off than I am.
Right.
That's one way in a bad situation to make yourself feel better. The other branch out would be like competitive motivation, picking a baseline to say, oh, in the other case, look at Harry and Sally, they're really successful, or they're doing the right things, that's my perception, and that gives me something to shoot for. So maybe little mini goals. So I think it's either to make yourself feel better or like a competitive goal to shoot for.
Or it actually could go the other way, which is some of what I was reading about is that the envy aspect of that could actually then make you feel bad about yourself not achieving what they achieve.
That's advanced.
No, I'm saying
I
think
I
there's a
see
lot
what
of
you're
people
saying.
like that. I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that look at, and you're seeing it now in our politics, the politics of envy, where someone is not entitled to that, or why should they have that because I work hard and I don't have that, and I think that, and some people who are not very not very high self-esteem, they actually will feel worse about themselves in some cases by looking at people who are doing better than them. And it's not a motivator; it's actually a demotivator. Do you see that too?
I do, but I think that's a different category. Because if you're asking me why do people focus on averages, then I would, I want to feel better, whether it's feeling better by comparing me to somebody doing worse or comparing me to somebody doing better that gives me motivation to try to strive for that. Yours is a third category, which is interesting, where if you do that, the envy piece, and then it actually makes you feel worse. Yeah, I'm not like that, so
Right.
I can't identify with it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this social comparison theory, I guess, is pretty well established in psychology. I'm certainly not a psychologist, but it seems to make sense. And the reason it ties into our discussion on averages is because, in society, in the media, and government, you tend to hear averages thrown out a lot. So you get anecdotal points of comparison. We can go through a few of them. So financial, right? So you hear a lot that the average income or something per household is is X.
But
right?
the median, I'm sure, is skewed on that.
The median, yeah. So I'll use median. The median income is X. The media doesn't use median and mean very much. They just use average, and that can be deceptive. Certainly, retirement. We had a show on retirement. You should go back and listen to that. But retirement savings. What is the median amount of savings for retirement for someone? You hear that frequently. For tax policy, for government policy, this is one that always kind of boggled my mind. So they'll cut off tax levels at certain incomes. But I read yesterday, 2 days ago or something like that, that the difference between living in San Francisco and I think it was El Paso, Texas, was 5x. So, for instance, if the IRS says that you are in the highest tax bracket at, let's call it $200,000, or I think it's less than that, but whatever it is, right? The difference between making $250,000 or $200,000 in San Francisco versus El Paso is astronomical. So why shouldn't there be regional adjustments in cost of living? I never could figure that out. And by the same token, if you're considering your career, if there's a younger person, considering where to start their career, I think a lot of people should really take this into account. I just ran the numbers. $100,000 in San Francisco is equal to $31,000 a year in San Antonio. San Antonio is the sixth largest city in the country. So if you have an option to start your career in San Francisco or New York, I guess could be in there, or San Antonio or Houston or something like that, or even some of the Florida cities, some of the cities in the South, I mean, you would have to think long and hard about it. It doesn't even count housing costs. You know what I mean? But isn't that something that I don't think people are thinking about very much?
We talked about instant gratification nation and why don't people have enough saved for the future and retirement. Yeah, I think when you're young, you're looking more for the excitement and willing to pay the price, or you're looking for location, whether it's mountains or a beach or a lot of clubs and bars and restaurants and sports teams and whatever, and you don't really stop and think about it. But I'll tell you, as you get older, you really start to think about it. Cost of living is huge.
Should there be a regional adjustment in taxes? I mean,
here's the problem. Yes, in theory, but how the heck would you get that implemented?
I don't know, but I mean, certainly, the nut that you need in New York or San Francisco is so much higher than other places, and obviously there's other higher. We're kind of at a tweener place here in Philadelphia. It's not the highest, but it's certainly not the cheapest either. But I always thought that that should be calculated in, or you'd think that more people would choose to live in cheaper areas.
They don't
we used to have mobility in this country. We don't seem to have mobility
They're not
anymore.
taught this stuff. I mean, there should be a whole different way to teach in colleges and universities as far as practicality and common sense and life skills. And this would be a great one. I think if you plan on moving and you're going to make $50,000 your first job out of college,
right?
I'd rather live somewhere where $30,000 gets me the same as $150,000 in New York or San Francisco.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and how much further would my dollar go for buying a house, buying a car, buying a lot of these people? I won't mention names, but I know somebody living in San Francisco.
Right.
And they're paying like $3,000 a month for an 800 square foot apartment.
Right.
They could buy a 3,000 square foot house
in Iowa, or even in San Antonio, right?
Yeah. So
yeah,
if you stop and think about it that way, I think it's an education. A light bulb would go off in my head.
And I think that as technology permits more and more remote workers, I hope that more people will wise up to this, and the workforce will begin to disperse out, and some of these lower cost areas will be attractive to people. And if you're it happened in Connecticut already. Connecticut had horrible tax policy, And there's lots of examples in Connecticut where homes there have not appreciated in 20 years, especially higher end homes. A lot of the hedge fund guys and stuff, the higher end homes have actually depreciated pretty consistently to worth half of what they were 25 years ago. So, I mean, it has happened in areas. It hasn't happened in New York and San Francisco yet, but I got to believe that common sense will just prevail. All right. So there's a couple other things we want to talk about. So there's other kind of areas where averages come into our decision making, and at an individual level, they don't really mean a lot. This is kind of a personal thing, but cancer survival statistics. My sister, older sister, got diagnosed with metastasized stage 4 cancer 12 years ago. And I'll never forget that what she told me, the doctor told her. She was, what's the first thing everyone does when they get diagnosed with cancer?
What are my chances for survival?
Exactly. They go on the internet, which is kind of one of the worst things you can do, and you look up survival rates, right? And usually it's usually the standard is 5-year survival rates. Well, of course, she did that. She's a nurse. She's very studious, and she did that, and she was obviously distraught. She goes in to see the surgeon, prepare for surgery, and she starts telling him about her concerns. And he says, of course, that those are just averages, and you're either going to be 0 or 100, which is totally true, right? This is either going to kill you or it's not. And, that really gave her a piece of thinking about this is grouping in thousands and thousands of people with this. So why should I be limited by what the average is? I could be one of the ones that isn't. And I think that's true with so many things that we could probably end the show right there, right? Because at the end of the day, there's all these outliers in every category, and an average is just a grouping, and it's helpful for macro planners and policy people and statisticians. But beyond that, you can actually make it a case that it's harmful to look at averages.
Well, the irony is the word average itself has a negative connotation. Oh, he's average, she's average, meaning she's right in the middle of the pack.
Right.
She's
right.
not distinguished herself. She's not above average. She's not good. She's not great.
Right.
So even the word itself
right.
kind of takes you to that, why compare yourself to something average, especially if you as an individual when you need to overcome it with health-related issues or job, finances, relationships, whatever. I want to be above average.
Right. And by the way, just to conclude that story, that her chances at that point, if you read the statistics, were not great. I mean, it's high probability that she wouldn't make it 5 years. And here it is, almost 13 years later, she's doing great.
Great example.
Right. So, but there's lots of other ones, Richie. So how do people assess what major they might want to take in college? They look at potential, obviously what they might be interested in, but they also look at what the potential average salary might be when they graduate.
Average
right?
salary.
Right? Isn't that what they do?
Average annual salary is a big one.
It's a big one, right? So when you go on vacation, I've done this. You do trip planning. What do? You look at the average rainfall or the average days of sun or the average temperature, right? And you know that when you get there, it doesn't mean it's going to be that, right? It could be anywhere around that, right?
Yeah, they got 90% of their rain in 3 months in the summer.
Exactly.
The rainfall might be 0 when you're there.
Right. I mean, if you have a sunny morning and a tornado comes through in the afternoon, is that an average day? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So I guess
sports. Look at everything in sports. Batting average, average yards per pass or average yards per run, and it's really a kind of a stupid number because you might want to look at how these players are doing in clutch situations, or
Right.
maybe their average implies like if you're a 300 batter, oh, you're an all-star. Well, what if the majority of your hits are in irrelevant games? You're either up big or down big,
Right.
And you get most of your hits in meaningless situations. Your average
Or in
is
garbage time
meaningless.
in basketball.
Garbage time,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, we could go on and on about this.
Yeah. Like here's a couple other ones here. So the cost to raise a child. Well, it's supposedly the statistics say it's $233,000 from birth to 18 is $233,000. But that's the average across all income levels. Guess what it is if you make over $107,000 a year, which is for those of us that are blessed, that's not a huge amount of money, a dual income, right? $372,000. So if you make over $107,000 a year, you're spending $150,000 more than the average to raise your kid 0 through 18, and that doesn't include college, by the way. So I mean, I guess we're beating a drum a little bit about how you really have to ask the second level and third level questions, and how it relates to your personal criteria as to what this means. And averages are only good for, planners and macro and statements of trends, but not so much at the individual
One
level.
more quick example, because it's very prevalent in our field of sales, IT sales, but really any sales job.
Right.
One of the first things that a recruiter or an HR person will tell you is what the average salesperson's making.
Right.
Well, meanwhile, on this is actually, I remember this happened to me a couple years ago. There were 10 people in the sales force, and one guy, unbelievable, made like $1.2 million.
He's Jeff Bezos.
Right. 8 of the 10 didn't even hit their number.
Right.
And but when you added his $1.2 million to everybody averaging 180,
Right. Right.
well, the average salesperson here is making $350.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Not so much.
Not so much.
So there's lots of other ones here, Richie. We probably don't have time to get to, but student debt. So the average student debt is, I think, where was it? I have it written down here. I'm sorry. Divorce rate. So the divorce rate is about 50%, but
I thought it was higher.
it's about 50%. But if you are college educated, a bachelor's degree, 78% success. So it's only like 22%. If you're a high school grad only or less, it's under 40%. So the point is that, you really do have to look deeper at the data and not just take the summary level. Having, where is it? Average home size has tripled in the last 3 decades, something like that. So, I mean, that's, when you think about it, is that really something that you should be considering or not? You know what I mean? What's the other one I had for you? The average number of times a married couple has sex. Big difference between when you're in your 20s and your 50s, evidently. So if the average is once a week for a married, but when you're in your 20s, it's more than that. And when you're over 50, it's less than that. So the point is that you really have to take that second level. You don't even want to touch that one, do you, Richie?
I'm just staring at you. No, I don't want to touch that.
All right. Any final comments before we move on to the quiz, Richie, about the problem with averages?
I think you've raised some great points, although this show may not pass our Thanksgiving giving thanks show last year. But no, again, Mark R. Weaver, you've educated the masses.
If nothing else, you learned median, and you've learned about social comparison theory.
Well, I already knew that.
And we knew about if you get cancer, God forbid, someday, don't look at the survivability statistics. So we've learned that. All right, Richie. So we're going to have some fun with see how, I think this is a pretty hard quiz. These are pretty common ones. So I'll just give you a little help. In 1968, the median age of a first marriage in the U.S. was 21 for females and 23 for males. What was it in 2018? Option 1, 26 and 28. Option 2, 27 and 29. Option 3, 28 and 30. And option 4, 29 and 31. First marriages, female and male.
28 and 30.
Excellent. 1 for 1. How'd you get that? That was pretty good.
Well, I know the age has gone up dramatically.
Right.
I just figured it wouldn't be the highest one, so I
Okay.
guessed.
So if it's high low, you're going to throw them out all the time.
I do a little bit of cognitive regression here.
All right. You're 1 for 1. What is the median amount of retirement savings? This goes back to our retirement show. What is the median amount of retirement savings for those in their 50s in the U.S.? Option 1, 117,000. Option 2, 126,000. Option 3, 139,000. And option 4, 142,000.
117,000.
That's exactly right. You're 2 for 2. Boy, you're getting. I thought these were hard. Maybe they're simple. For a brainiac like you, maybe they are. Number 3. What is the median life expectancy of a U.S. man currently aged 56? And that hits home with us. Option 1, 79.4. Option 2, 80.7. Option 3, 82.1. And option 4, 83.3.
80.7.
You're 3 for 3. This guy is on a roll. You know what? Where's your DraftKings app or your computer? You know, your go to the casinos. All right, let's see if you can go 4 for 4. What is the median student debt? So the outstanding balance in the U.S. Option 1, 11,000. Option 2, 13,000. Option 3, 15,000. Option 4, 17,000.
17,000.
That's exactly right. Did you see my paper? He's looking. He's got like someone behind me with binoculars, I guess.
I'm feeling it.
You are feeling it. You're 4 for 4. All right, number 5. What does the average U.S. household spend on food each year? This is eat at home plus dine out. Average. Option 1, 7,700. Option 2, 8,400. Option 3, 8,900. And option 4, 9,300.
8,400.
Ah, you missed one. 7,700.
Darn it.
All right. So you're 4 and 1. Number 6. You have
How many are there?
2 more. You have 2 more. What was the U.S. median household income in 2018? Option A, 59,000. Option B, 61,000. Option C, 63,000. And option D, 65,000. That's median, Rich.
59,000.
No, it was 63,000. So you're 4 and 2. It was number 3, 63,000. All right.
That was close.
You were close. Last one. Percentage of, this will hit home, Richie. This will probably be fun for you. Percentage of teenage girls, although your daughter's not at this age yet. Percentage of teenage girls age 13 through 17 who say they love to shop. Option 1, 48%. Option 2, 62%. Option 3, 76%. Or option 4, 88%. Teenage girls 13 through 17 who say they love to shop.
88%.
That is absolutely correct. You were very impressive, Richie. I honestly thought that you would only get like 2 of these, but you were on a roll there at the beginning. So you were 5 and 2.
5 and 2.
5 and 2. Very, very impressive.
Thank
All
you.
right. So Richie, before we close out the show, and we'll do a little talk at the end about what our next show is, but any thoughts on this show and averages and the problem with them, or any other comments?
You know, Mark R.W. Weaver, I got to say, when you have your mind made up, you never admit you're wrong about anything. But even though that's your personality, you do teach. I learned something today. So thank you for your educational prowess, our listeners. I just got a lot of texts saying, thank you, Mark. This episode was slightly better than the
first 5
episode.
minutes would have indicated. All All right, folks. Well, we had fun today, and make sure you listen next episode where Rich and I hold our annual year in review episode. That was a highly rated episode last year, by the way, as opposed to the thankfulness one. But that was a very highly rated one. And basically, if you didn't listen last year, what we'll do next episode is we'll plan to talk about our society, what the big things that happened in our society and culture in 2019. And then we'll spend the latter part of the show talking about the highlights of our show. So both society's big events and happenings in 2019 and our show's big happenings and highlights of our show. What do you think about that, Richie?
Exciting. And I think I'm going to have a glass of scotch for that one.
You might have to prep a little bit for that one, Rich. You can't just wing it like with all your talent. So anyhow, as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.